Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sirhan on X, the show that combines the past and the present of sports to prepare yourselves for better things in the future. We are live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America, and it is Tuesday, June the 10th of the calendar year 2025. And hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Nice weather over here in Cincinnati, but had to work in it. That's the misfortune of having a work schedule, having to miss out on the gorgeous weather. But I will be happy to enjoy it here later this evening and over the next several days. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Lots to get to, and a historical moment in the middle of it that basically they spun it off to a movie. The real story took place 90 years ago today. I will touch on that here in a minute. But I'd like to start off with some local news here in Cincinnati because the drama continues. It is, of course, the holdouts of defensive edge rushers Trey Hendrickson and Shemar Stewart. Well, let's start with the root cause of all of this. As I said, it's always the Bengals fans. It's those super fans like Zim and the captain, among others, and the media people like Kelsey Conway and people like that. They're the reasons why this is happening. So you guys want to point the finger at ownership? Go ahead, but they're not the real reason. It's you guys that are the reason for it because you don't want to accept the accountability. I'll touch on that here in a second. But here we go. I'm going to read this quote. This came from Shemar Stewart, who was a first-round draft pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, pick number 17 overall. And he had a very eyebrow-raising comment. This is in regards to the contract situation. I'm 100% right. It should be a no-brainer. In Trey's case, being Trey Hendrickson, that should be a no-brainer too. I'm not asking for what you have done before, but y'all Bengals want to win games and want to win, how do I say this, arguments more than winning games, in my opinion. This thing has dragged out a little too far, as we all know, and a little way too far. I mean, I said when they got the contract extensions with Chase and Higgins, that was 2 years after its expiration date. And now they're going to try and drag this out here also. But if I'm Shemar Stewart, I don't have a leg to stand on. I say this for one simple reason. I mean, the guy is talented, but I'm not sure I would have drafted that guy 17th overall. I mean, there were some guys that could have gotten over him, but he got the pick overall, 17th overall. And the reason why I don't put much blame on the ownership is for a simple reason. I've seen it for 30 plus years. That's how they do business. Tigers aren't going to change their stripes because that's how they're going to do business, whether everybody likes it or not. Simply put, I've seen it. I've heard it. I've read about it since this ownership came into this team from when it started back in 1990. Everybody knows this. That's why I don't say anything about it because that's who they are. Everyone keeps saying they're the so-called new Bengals after their Super Bowl run in 2021. This is who they've been all along. Basically, that run to the Super Bowl was basically in spite of ownership because they want to win it their way. They don't want to adjust to the times, and that's how they've always been. But when it comes to Shemar Stewart, I've said this. The guy should be blessed and happy he was picked 17th overall because, I mean, the guy's talent is there, but I'm not sure that would have been the pick I would have had if I had to choose it myself. There are other options they could have gone to, especially when you talk about how deep the edge rusher position was at pick number 17, especially when you consider they're likely going to need to find someone to replace Trey Hendrickson simply because we know he's going to be 31 years old and is entering the final year of his contract, presuming that they don't, negotiate or anything. But I don't know where they go with on this. It's just not a good look overall for him. But the things he said about the Bengals organization is something I've seen for 3 decades. And that's why I don't engage in that part of it, simply because I've seen it, I've heard it, and my eyes have been the one that's done the ultimate dictating. I mean, they could talk about him all they want, have at it, but, what's complaining going to get you to this point? I said all along, the biggest issue when it comes to the fans I deal with here in Cincinnati was the fact that over the last 3 years, they were so obsessed with wanting to get Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins paid, and they didn't think the details out through. And because they didn't think the details out through, This is why this is happening, because, the salary cap can only get you so much. Everybody knows this. I mean, I said with the Chase and Higgins signings, they should have had it done when they had the value, not wait till their values rose, especially if we consider Jamar Chase coming off a Triple Crown season and Trey and T. Higgins having that basically the game against the Denver Broncos in the home season finale where he just balled out and basically watched his value rise. And as a result, now the thing's a salary cap mess. And now you have two edge rushers basically who's not going to come because they think they're going to be paid the actual value of what they're worth. Of course, Hendrickson, I said, is a little tricky simply because of his age. If they have the cap money to spend it, might as well go spend it. But one thing, though, going through the media the way those two have with this doesn't help their cause. I've always been old school in one reason and one reason only. It is simply because if you do this out in the open, your value drops. And we saw what happened several years ago. I bring this up all the time. The situation with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Le'Veon Bell, because he did it the way he did it and then held out for the season, his value dropped. Now I get it for this position. Let's remember what happened in the offseason. Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter. They got extensions that superseded $34 million and up. Of course, with Garrett, an insane number. I mean, that was a case of the Browns being desperate because Myles Garrett wanted out. The Browns basically just said, we'll make you the highest paid player in NFL history if you accept this deal. And Garrett accepted it. That was a desperate situation. But when you talk about what has gone on here in Cincinnati, this is at the end of the day, I want to say I'm surprised, but I cannot, because I've seen it for 30 plus years. I mean, I've seen it from the ownership, their coaching staff, from how they handle business. They try to do things the way, old school way, that basically is just outdated, at least by a decade and a half. And now what do we get as a result? This. That's why I was not a big proponent of extending the contracts they did, simply because they had the chance to, but they didn't, and they waited too late. And because they wait things too late and string things out, there's a mess here, and it's going to be ongoing till this thing is rectified. Do I think deals will eventually get done? I'd say yes. I mean, they'll probably get something. There's got to be a happy medium somewhere, don't they? I mean, the Bengals took Stewart 17th overall for a reason. I mean, they're not just going to put him 17th overall so they can just sideline him. But let's see where this one goes. Shemar Stewart just doesn't look good saying things like this on the media, although people are all over the place about this simply because, this once again divides the Bengals community. Now, every time I think of the Bengals fans, I think of this as always. For those of you listening on the iHeartRadio app, it is the fact that this is a picture I took in 2022 of the Cincinnati Bengals being the proud sponsor of Kleenex tissues. And that's something the Bengals fans needed for the last several years. And I say this wholeheartedly because those that know me know I take my L's like a man when it comes down to it and don't make excuses while they do. Because when you guys went on Twitter parties over the last few years after losing the AFC title game to Kansas City in 2022, saying the things you say, doing the things you do, embarrassing yourselves the way you do, that's why I distance myself from you guys. That's why when it comes to just being a Bengals fan, I'm here and you guys are over there. And now you guys are doing this again with this situation when you guys fail and willfully fail to acknowledge what happened over the past couple years when you guys pushed for narratives to get Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins paid. You guys did not think this thing through. You guys have short-sighted vision. I'm talking about the fans, all those super fans or Coors Plant fans, whatever the frick the name they want to use, like Zim, the captain who's a coward himself, among many others. The Cincinnati media over here, like Sarah Elise, who's a bona fide coward. Same with Kelsey Conway. You can add Kay Adams to the list. She's also a coward. And yeah, I'm pulling the names out. I'm singling you guys out simply because you guys called for narratives over the last few years, and now you're talking about this narrative. That's why you guys failed to see the big picture 3 years ago when you lost the AFC title game to the Kansas City Chiefs because I told you this was going to happen. I mean, I get the Joe Burrow narrative. You have a top 5 quarterback, you pay him, period. No brainer. I get the Jamar Chase narrative. The guy's coming off a Triple Crown season, pay him. Yes, I get it. T. Higgins one, it's a little tricky, and I say this because the guy has been in and out of the lineup with the injury issues. I understand it, but that one is where I thought it was 2 years past his expiration date to get the contract done, simply because his value went up. And because of that, that's why we're in the mess we're in. And you guys over there in Cincinnati did not think these through. You guys had short-sighted vision. You guys had this almost grotesque, sickening, and psychotic view when it comes to wanting these guys paid. And not to mention, you guys threw a Twitter party when you signed Orlando Brown Jr. from the Kansas City Chiefs. How did that turn out in the end? 2 straight misses of the playoffs since you got him, while the team you left, the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl ring. A lot of you guys need to look at yourselves in the mirror for why this is happening, simply because you guys pushed a narrative and you didn't think this through. I told you guys then, slow down. You didn't. You forced narratives when it comes to Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, putting them in categories with guys like Mahomes, Allen, and Jackson when he has no business being in there because he's not that good. You guys put Jamar Chase in the same conversation as Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's 1A and 1B. Take your pick. Coin flip. I'll give you that. But that's among many other things that you guys don't see well. And that is why this is the mess we're in. Look at yourselves in the mirror, because this is going to be a mess moving forward. Because I don't know what's going to happen with this situation with Stewart and Hendrickson. I'll say the Hendrickson situation had many chances to be done before this, and it was blown. Yes, I agree with that part of it. You take care of your own when you have the chance to, and you didn't. And because you didn't, you were so obsessed with wanting to sign Orlando Brown Jr. from Kansas City, and we know how that turned out in the end. That's why this is it. The money you gave Orlando Brown Jr., you could have gotten to Trey Hendrickson. You guys, not only that, you used Orlando Brown Jr. to run Jesse Bates out of Cincinnati, and look at the year he's had in Atlanta since he left. That should tell you what happened when you threw an unnecessary Twitter party when you signed Orlando Brown Jr. And, man, you want to talk about an epic fail? That's why Chiefs fans are laughing at you. Even that's why Ravens fans were laughing at you, because Baltimore was quick to want to send him to Kansas City, and boy, did they get rid of him quick. Trust me, you should have kept you would have kept Jesse Bates and Trey Hendrickson instead of blow all that money on Orlando Brown Jr. We're not having this conversation. Per usual, the fans and the super fans have missed the point, and I have an itch. They're going to continue to miss a point until they get it. Plain and simple. Feels good to go on one of those rants a little bit. I mean, I love the Bengals like all of them do. I mean, I've been a fan since '85, and I love the hell out of the team. I will support my team. I will cheer on my team. But I can't. One thing I can't stand is toxicity and cowardice. That's the definition of Bengals fans, especially here in Cincinnati. The super fave plans, and of course, the Cincinnati media. We talk about Channel 9 WCPO, Channel 12 WKRC, Channel 5 WLWT, Fox 19, and of course the radio stations with the WEBN, where Sarah Elise, the coward that she is on that one, and of course 1530 Homer, ESPN, among the few others. They all have some growing up to do, plain and simple. But I'll be here. You guys can make your fools out of yourselves over there. Don't drag me into your mess, because I will not welcome it. Case closed. Not too many more stuff that's going on in the NFL. I might as well just touch on this, because I just basically blew 5 minutes of it. It was the release of Packers cornerback Jaire Alexander. When he's healthy, he can be as good as any corner in the NFL. I mean, we know this. I mean, he's had his duels with Justin Jefferson when Green Bay and Minnesota have their NFC North battles. But the key part is when healthy, because he's coming off I believe it's the PCL recovery. And I believe they tried to restructure the deal to try and keep Alexander because they wanted him. Apparently, nothing came through. They tried trading him before the draft, didn't get the packages they want, so they gave him the pink slip. I mean, there's going to be some suitors out there who need secondary help. I mean, all links go to the Baltimore Ravens, which I get because how bad that secondary was, especially in the 2 games against Cincinnati where they just got diced up and sliced up. I think he could be a good piece, but he's not a number one like some people think he is. I mean, when he's on, maybe you can say a CB2 or maybe a CB3, something like that. But to point him as a CB1, the guy's had injury hit, especially with his knees, especially missed a significant time last season. Excuse me. So there's going to be suitors for him. I mean, I think he could fit anywhere, especially when you have a deep secondary roster, a depth piece, or someone who could play a slot corner, a second cornerback 2. But he's not a cornerback 1 like some people think he is. Still a solid corner. But remember, this guy's had 2 injuries, and there's also some issues in that locker room with Green Bay, which we know the Packers locker room is very, very strict when it comes to some of the things they do. Maybe a bridge was burnt or something. Who knows? But he's still a very, very good cornerback. Whoever gets him is going to get a solid piece. I mean, all signs point to Baltimore, which I think he'll be solid there. I don't know if he'll be great. Some people talk about him in Kansas City opposite Trent McDuffie. I think that'd be a good fit for him opposite him. Put him against a wide receiver 2, so he doesn't have to handle the top assignment. Now, of course, he handled Justin Jefferson in all those years in Green Bay. But still a solid cornerback, not the number 1 cornerback everybody says he is. I'll acknowledge that. Very, very solid. Maybe a 2 or an extra depth piece you could use, especially if you consider the injury history he's had. He's not a number 1. Still a solid cornerback. Somebody will get him, and it'll probably be sooner than you think. And, of course, what came out today is another holdout in Washington. This one is interesting to me because this one I didn't see coming. Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders, the number 1 target for Jaden Daniels. Everybody knows my, joy I get talking about the great Jaden Daniels in his second year. But Terry McLaurin, like a lot of the others, wants a new contract, understandably so. Interesting because I don't know what better situation he can find himself in, simply because when you have a top 4 quarterback in the NFL in Jaden Daniels, I mean, you should be wanting to be there, wanting to play with him, but I guess he wants to be compensated for it. I get it. Anybody knows me knows I don't partake in the contractual fields because it's too much verbiage going on there, and I think worrying about when someone gets paid is basically being a brown noser. But I still think McLaurin's going to be there with Daniels when the season starts. Something will come up. There's going to be suitors who needs a receiver that could get him if nothing comes up. But I still think he's going to be with the Washington Commanders when the season starts. I don't know what better situation he could be in. We consider the fact he's Jaden Daniels' number 1 target. They're coming off a run to the NFC title game, and it basically had a stellar season with the standout rookie Daniels last season. I don't know what better situation he could find himself in because if someone told me I could play with a standout talent like Jaden Daniels, I'll be there. And I'm not even thinking twice. I mean, part of it's more than likely agent talk, which we know how agent talk goes in team sports and team contracts, not just the NFL and other sports also. But this one, it's a bit of an eyebrow raiser because when you get a chance to play with Jaden Daniels, you better go out there and play with him. I mean, the only other 3 quarterbacks I put over Daniels right now is Mahomes, Allen, and Jackson. That's a no-brainer. I mean, those 3 are the king of the crop. Daniels is 4th. The rest of it, have at it because it's an opinionated list, as we all know. By the way, shout out Josh Isles. Shout out Howard Gaddis. I see both of you guys out there. Hope you guys are doing good. Now to actually a sneaky good signing, I think. This was Nick Chubb to the Texans. Interesting 1-2 punch at running back with him and Joe Mixon. I mean, I think he'll help. I mean, whether he could be the guy he was in Cleveland, especially coming out of Georgia, who knows? But a good 1-2 punch he would have with Mixon where they can just rotate each other. Could probably fill in when necessary. But, of course, part of it is how that O-line does because we know that offensive line in Houston was just absolutely abysmal last season. Of course, they sent Laramie Tunsil out of town, who was their premier tackle, but Tunsil just got absolutely destroyed in that AFC divisional game in Kansas City. But a good 1-2 punch at running back with him and Mixon. And I think he should balance it out a little bit. Of course, Mixon's on and Chubb both have had many miles for running backs in the NFL, maybe in all football, because we know the the peak of an NFL running back is short-lived unless you're something generational like Barry Sanders or Walter Payton, among many others. But I do like the signing for Houston. It puts him in a better situation than he was in not too long ago in Cleveland. Of course, he's coming off all of the terrible injuries he's had over the last several years. If there's one guy that I think can bounce back to be a solid running back still in the National Football League, because he's done it before, it's Nick Chubb. Wouldn't put it past him to come back and be a significant part of what the Houston Texans do. Certainly it'd be a heck of a 1-2 punch he has with Joe Mixon. Granted, both guys are in their late 20s, which we know how that goes with running backs in the NFL. But still a solid depth piece at the running back position for the Houston Texans, and Nick Chubb finds himself in a very good situation. Actually, I think running back by committees is probably the way to go, because you've seen it in Detroit not too long ago with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, among many some of the teams that go through it. Baltimore with Derrick Henry, they're going to get Keaton Mitchell back. That's a good situation there. But I think running back by committee, I think, should be the way to go in this NFL, especially when you talk about the chance to save the energy for the NFL running backs, because we know how the peaks of NFL running backs can be. But good signing for the Texans, especially a good one for Nick Chubb, because he's going to be on a winner. Because the Texans are still going to be the favorites. They're more likely going to win the South by default again, because the other three teams still have a way to go to even catch up. But I think it's more the outlier of the division, how it is, because, you know, how Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Indy still have holes to fill. Now, I know Indy had an excellent NFL draft, got some key pieces to help out, but who knows what happens with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. I still think Daniel Jones is going to overtake Richardson for that starting spot once the season starts. But back to Houston, good signing for the Texans getting Nick Chubb, and good signing by Nick Chubb going to Houston. At least he's on a winner, something he hasn't been in Cleveland in his entire career. He deserves to be on a winner. Cleveland certainly is not a winner. Houston is. Think about the trade they had 3 years ago. I mean, not only did Cleveland fleece the Texans for all those draft picks, now they get Cleveland's top running back. Yeah, they're continuing to fleece the Browns. Good job. Good job, Houston Texans. Now, of course, the big news over the weekend is the official signing of Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh. I'll just touch on this because I am not the fan of that narcissist coward, as everybody knows, and a lot of people aren't. More of a reflection of the quarterback room in Pittsburgh. I get it. I mean, maybe could he have a renaissance? Maybe possible. I mean, we know the guy when he's healthy, he can put up numbers. Just I think his baggage wasn't necessarily worth it. Now, if he comes back and is close to what he was, you know, a few years before the Achilles injury, you know, a good catch for Pittsburgh. You know, I mean, their ceiling for them, I said, is second in the NFC North. Excuse me, second in the AFC North behind the Baltimore Ravens, which I think they'll finish there again. But if he can come back to anywhere what he was, they're going to win some games. I mean, they're still going to win their 8-9 games anyways. They're going to flirt that 9-8, 10-7 range, sneak in the AFC wild card is one of those last seeds like they did last year. And, of course, they got dog walked by Baltimore. Probably going to happen again in this year's playoffs. But the makeup of this Pittsburgh roster, you know, I think it's trending upward. I like the draft they had. I also get why they dealt George Pickens. Some people are saying they should look into Terry McLaurin. Depends what Washington's asking price is, which I'm sure is going to be quite high. They're probably going to need a receiver opposite DK Metcalf after losing Pickens, but I get why they wanted to send Pickens out the door, not because of his talent, because of the baggage. I'm sure something went on that nobody knows about. And basically the Pittsburgh Steelers having to deal with Le'Veon Bell and his baggage, having to deal with Antonio Brown and his baggage. We know how that was. Now they sent George Pickens out. The only question I have is why do they want to bring in Aaron Rodgers and the baggage? We know the football talent is there. I mean, I get it. He's 41 years old, a couple years removed from the Achilles injury. Got it. What do you gain out of bringing the guys with the baggage? We sent 3 guys with big baggage out the door over the last decade. We talk about Bell, Brown, and Pickens. That's the only question I have out of all of this. Maybe it's because you don't have the greatest quarterback room in the NFL, which we know is probably one of the worst. That's why I said to all of my Steelers fans in the NFL gridiron when I talk with them, I would have just taken the flyer on Will Howard and rolled with Mason Crosby and see where that got you. Because even then, I still think you would have won your 8-9 games. You're not good enough to be a Super Bowl contender or someone that makes a deep run, but that roster isn't bad enough to tank for a high pick. You're going to be in that treadmill category again. And everybody knows I'm not the fan of treadmill teams because you don't get anywhere with it. My guess is they want to keep Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season record alive, which is still doable. But is that good enough at this point? I mean, there should be some accountability for that. Maybe get the guy to actually get a win in Pittsburgh. I mean, the guy's won before, so it's not that he can't do it. I mean, I thought they had a good draft. The free agency is wasn't bad. They're going to be in the playoffs again. So I know people are talking about them only winning 4-5, going 5-12, 6-10, and 6-11 in that category. I don't think they're going to be that bad. Mike Tomlin is a competitive guy. He'll have that team competing. They're going to win some games. But it'll be interesting to see where they go with all of this. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers is close to what he was, even a couple years before the Achilles injury, I think he'll do something in Pittsburgh. But the question I ask again, why would you want to take on the baggage he brings, given that you brought the baggage of guys like Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Jordan Pickens, and then sent them out the door? That's a question I really have out of all of this. So we'll see how it goes. Can't wait for the season to start because, the mandatory mini camps, we had the OTAs. It's that time of year, and I can't wait to have my a second year of my whole NFL preview show coming up within the next month. Like last year, I'm going to dissect each team, good, bad, pretty, ugly, and what to expect moving forward. Some people will like it. Some people won't like it, but I do my own research with my own 2 eyes. Plain and simple. I don't defer to anyone. I don't defer to any media outlet or anything. I just do what I do. Simple. Now that covers the NFL coverage. Now we're going to touch on some boxing history today before I get to some of the other other topics in boxing. Actually, it was 90 years ago today. This week at the Long Island Bowl in Queens, New York. Back then it was known as the Madison Square Garden Bowl, where an historical upset took place. It was the original Cinderella Man. You guys know the story of the movie Cinderella Man? Well, guess what? The original took place 90 years ago in New York. It was James J. Braddock shocking Max Baer as odds went from 6-1 to 10-1. Never mind, this is before the Miracle on Ice. This is before Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. This is before Super Bowl III. This is even before Clay Liston won February 25th, 1964. When you talk about the historical upsets that took place all time, before all of that, this was the upset of all time. Because when you talk about the background of a guy like James J. Braddock, talk about going from the outhouse to the penthouse, that's what James J. Braddock did. I mean, you're talking about a guy who basically was born on the 48th Street in Manhattan's Hell Kitchen. Basically, originally he wanted to play college football for University of Notre Dame for then the great head coach Nuke Rockne. For the college football followers, especially Notre Dame, you know who I'm referring to. He pursued a career, his boxing career in 1923. Basically, he started to gain recognition as a top fighter. Maybe the road to this point really began. We consider that he had a 4-fight winning streak, basically starting out when he obliterated a fighter named Corn Griffin in 1934 with a 3rd-round knockout, and basically moved his record to then it was 48-25-7. And he followed through with 2 more wins over one as a standout at the time named John Henry Lewis, who was a contender. James J. Braddock beat him on points. And then you talk about a guy like Art Lasky getting the unanimous decision 3 months before the night that June of 1935 when he got the title shot against Max Baer. Now we talk about a guy like Max Baer. Just do this here real quick. Max Baer, maybe not as feared as a Sonny Liston or a George Foreman, but like those two guys, guy was known for his punch. And basically, he had himself a good run as the heavyweight champion when he won the title. Before that, from the standout Primo Carnera, when he stopped him in 11 rounds to win the championship, which set up this particular night a year before the Braddock Baer fight. Now, we talk about everything that led to this. Braddock has had an inconsistent career up to this point. I mean, basically, if you want, he was like Buster Douglas of that time. I mean, Douglas, the modern knows how inconsistent James Buster Douglas was. Same went with James J. Braddock. When you consider the record he had, I mean, he had a 48-25-7 record. And going into this particular fight with Max Baer. Baer was a champion known for not just a power, but also as a showmanship. One of the I say feared men, but one that few, if any, wanted to fight. But when you talk about this particular night that took place between James J. Braddock and Max Baer, it had almost a similar parallels to Cassius Clay, Sonny Liston 1, and James Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson. Because what James J. Braddock did to Max Baer was basically give him the equivalent of a boxing lesson. I mean, he started out controlling the early rounds, started to frustrate Baer, who couldn't get off. And as fight was going on, even though Baer was starting to employ pressure himself, everything he did, Braddock had an answer for. And basically, anything Baer tried couldn't do anything because James J. Braddock timed Max Baer perfectly with ring generalship and counter shots. And as this fight was going on, even though Baer started to get more aggressive, the story here was still he couldn't do anything to James J. Braddock. And basically, as the last few rounds started to come on, Braddock was starting to really get to Baer, started to stun him and hurt him, especially in the last two rounds. The biggest one, of course, was a 14th round with the right cross that stunned Baer, the best punch of the fight, and you had a feeling it was going to happen. The 15th round, both guys were gassed, but the difference here was even though Braddock was more tired than Max Baer, he was still outlanding Max Baer anytime he wanted. And at the end of the day, it was James J. Braddock as a 10-1 underdog, Cinderella man, shocking the world 90 years ago in Long Island Bowl in Queens, New York, to become the heavyweight champion of the world and one of the more all-time great underdog stories in all walks of life. I mean, it's there in the movie Cinderella Man, based on the life of the standout James J. Braddock. It was 90 years ago today. James J. Braddock shocked the world before Clay Liston won, before Douglas Tyson, before some other historical upsets like the Miracle on Ice and Super Bowl III. The real upset of all time at that point was what happened 90 years ago when James J. Braddock, the Cinderella Man, shocked the strong, tough, and durable Max Baer by unanimous decision, 11 rounds to 3, with a couple of them, with one of them even in there, to win the heavyweight championship and to reach the pedestal. Cinderella stories are just something to behold, and we all know this. I mean, we all love the underdog stories. Back then, if you was a 10-1 underdog, if you pointed today, it's like the equivalent of being not even Buster Douglas odds of the Mike Tyson fight would compare to that. I mean, the Douglas Tyson odds would be pick'em compared to what the odds would be for this fight had it been today instead of 1935, because 10-1 odds were almost unthought of when you consider the fact that James J. Braddock worked to this point, got the standout wins, especially against a guy like John Henry Lewis in the middle of all of that, and fighting Max Baer, a very well-respected champion, and basically just almost like gave him boxing lesson and then started to get better as the fight wore on, even though Baer was implementing the pressure. That shows you that anything can happen in the sport of boxing, and it was the original greatest upset in boxing history at the time. The only one compared to that, we have to go back 30 years before that, was when James J. Corbett shocked the bare knuckle specialist John L. Sullivan. That's how significant of an upset that was. and we watch the Cinderella Man based on the life of James J. Braddock, you will know it. James J. Braddock was one of those stories we talk about the outhouse to the penthouse, especially spending time in Hell's Kitchen, which everybody knows what that's like. To tell you about the historical significance of the Cinderella Man and what James J. Braddock did 90 years ago. Just absolutely stellar stuff. I mean, not that he didn't. I mean, he's not that he didn't just ran like everyone likes to say they do. He was stepping around. He was staying in the pocket, and every time Max Baer tried to do something, James J. Braddock had an answer, and basically he frustrated Max Baer to a point to where Max Baer was basically confused and couldn't do anything. Actually, a poignant moment midway through the fight was when, out of a clinch, basically a Baer uppercut, nothing happens, but a counter right by Braddock, and you start to see Baer's legs wobble. That should tell you what this fight was going to be. Anything Max Baer tried to do, James J. Braddock had an answer. 90 years ago today, Cinderella Man was the real thing. James J. Braddock shocks the world with insurmountable odds to win the heavyweight championship of the world. Now, of course, after that fight, Braddock would fight 2 more times. 2 years after that, he fought the second greatest heavyweight of all time, Joe Louis, in a fight where he was knocked out in 8 rounds at Comiskey Park. But one of the real great things out of this was every time Joe Louis saw James J. Braddock anywhere, whether it be in the ring or outside of it, he always referred to James J. Braddock as champ. To tell you the respect that was earned by James J. Braddock when he shocked Max Baer 90 years ago. And of course, the worst part of this is how pathetically bad Max Baer looked. I mean, Sonny Liston, we saw how bad he looked against Cassius Clay. That's how bad Max Baer looked against Braddock. And it was just awful. I mean, this was Max. You say it's your fight to lose. It was Max Baer's fight to lose because he was the heavy favorite. Again, 10-1 odds back then is like maybe 75-1 today. That's how big of a favorite Max Baer was against a guy who was basically a 2-1 win-loss ratio. We talk about the record of Braddock. And he basically laid an egg because no matter how hard he tried or whatever he did, he had no answers for Braddock. He wasn't leaving Queens, New York without the heavyweight championship. And that was so true 90 years ago today. Shout out to the great James J. Braddock for maybe the original greatest upset in boxing history, maybe the original greatest upset in sports history before all the other ones came through as we know it. That one stands alone. Just watch the movie Cinderella Man. That's all I need to know. And another one that took place, this one took place about a decade later. This was the end of a wild trilogy between Tony Zale and Rocky Graziano. First fight, it was Tony Zale beating Graziano to retain his world middleweight championship by a 6th round knockout. It was the fight of the year of 1946. Fast forward to 1947. It was a 1947 fight of the year. Rocky Graziano gets his revenge by a 6th round knockout. And leads to the third fight that took place at Ruppert Stadium in Newark, New Jersey. This was the third fight. And in this particular fight, Tony Zale stepped up his game. And even though he was still mixing up with the tough, durable, and hard as a rock Rocky Graziano, who was a tough out for anyone in the back end of the 1940s, Tony Zale separated himself from him by just obliterating him in the 3rd round and regaining the middleweight championship of the world. Now, let me remind you, in terms of the history of this, when he knocked out Graziano on this night, he became the 3rd man to regain the world middleweight championship, joining the likes of Al Hostek and Stanley Ketchel, 2 premier all-time greats of the way past. But what happened with this one here is that the difference was Tony Zale, instead of getting frantic and wild, mixing it up with the wild brawler Graziano, who's known as a high-volume puncher with decent power, Zale decided to use the ring and stay cautious to begin with. And as the 2nd round began, both guys, then we start to see the action a little bit. But at the end of the day, the third round came, and Tony Zale said, heck with it. I'm taking over. And he basically floored Graziano twice. The second time, you could probably say he concussed him to where Graziano was down and out and barely beat the count, but he was out of it. And his head, and basically, he was done. The fight was over. Tony Zale, his name in history is secure when he became the undisputed middleweight championship, when he regained the title from the guy he lost it to a year before, Rocky Graziano. A top 20 all-time great middleweight was Tony Zale. I mean, the resume itself. Also, we talk about the fights with Rocky Graziano. I mean, gave Billy Conn all he can handle in 1942. Conn recognizes probably the top 3 all-time great at light heavyweight. Gave Joe Louis all he could handle at heavyweight. Tells you the greatness of Billy Conn. To go on down the resume of Tony Zale, you're talking about guys like Sherman Edwards, Steve Mamakos, among many others. And basically his career ended when he lost his middleweight championship after this to the standout Marcel Cerdan, one of the premier Hispanic fighters ever. But Tony Zale basically stamped his history 77 years ago today at Newark, New Jersey, when he pasted the tough, durable man of steel Rocky Graziano unconscious in the third round to regain the undisputed middleweight championship. And a terrific all-time great was Tony Zale. Duck no one, had an amazing record along the way. Two times he was the world middleweight champion, and his place in history secure among the all-time great middleweights. Probably say the bottom half of, I said the top 20, could make a case for the bottom half of the top 10, but it's certainly an all-time great middleweight. The standout Tony Zale, back down from no one, and this was probably his finest hour when he just knocked unconscious the guy that was known for the man of steel, the great Rocky Graziano. All-time great is Tony Zale. So I mixed things up with a bit of history. Now let's touch on some things that took place over the weekend, and there's a lot I gotta get off my chest. Let's start with what took place in Norfolk, Virginia. Keyshawn Davis, you stupid coward. Look at how you carried yourself at the weigh-in. Look at what you did after the fight when your brother lost. That was just a walking embarrassment. No other way to put it. And all the build-up, you was taunting Abdullah Mason, a fellow Norfolk, Virginia native. How did that come back to you in the end? You lose your title on the scales by coming in over 4.5 pounds over. And then, mind you, 2 fights before, it's 2 or 3 fights before, I can't remember the number. You fought a fighter named Gustavo Lamos, and the guy was 12 pounds over, and you basically called him unprofessional. You coming in 4.5 pounds over for a fight against Edwin De Los Santos, and not just Edwin De Los Santos, basically a weight-drained Edwin De Los Santos. You can tell by his face, it was basically like stretched out like a stick. I mean, that's how stretched out and strung out Edwin De Los Santos was. And then of course the footage where you jumped the guy who beat your brother, at least attempted to, when you had your son in the stroller watching the whole thing as all this was going on. We've seen a lot of theatrics in boxing. We all know this. I mean, I can point to a boatload of them. This isn't theatrics. This is just a narcissist with sociopathic tendencies, carrying himself like a coward. And honestly, I wouldn't be... Actually, a lot of fight fans say this, and I will echo this. I would be fine if I never saw that guy fight again, because he doesn't deserve an opportunity given how he carried himself throughout the week, how he carried himself when he taunted Abdullah Mason, only to show up at the weigh-in 4.5 pounds over and lose your title on the scales. And kudos to Edwin De Los Santos for saying, I'm not going through with the fight. Kudos, because he doesn't deserve the opportunity. Now, of course, they're going to say, I guess now he's going to be paid his purse. No, the purse should be paid from Keyshawn Davis's pocket. Why? Because that coward is the reason why that happened. Anybody with a brain knows this. And Keyshawn Davis would be best served to never see that guy in the ring ever again. What a wonker this guy is. And man, for you to jump somebody in an event with your son witnessing, your baby child in a stroller watching this, what does it say about you at the end of the day? And you're still taunting people in the audience as the card was going on. And basically in your own hometown, where basically you got outdone by Abdullah Mason, who just impressed that night. I'll just say this. Your best bet is simply go away and go away for good. The whole thing was just an embarrassment. It was a humiliation. It was cowardice. And I've said all along, especially I've talked about this to some of the American fight fans. Everybody says American boxing took a step back. Wrong. America hasn't taken a step back, not just been taking a step back. It's been taking so many steps back, it doesn't know how to take steps forward. Keyshawn Davis missed an opportunity here because he wants to carry himself like a sociopathic coward. You saw what happened with the missed weight, among many others. And honestly, we'd be best served to never see this guy on television or in the ring ever again, because that whole thing was just an embarrassment. Shame on him. How the hell are you going to jump a guy in the audience when you have a baby in your own child in a stroller? Somebody explain that to me. Please explain it to me. I don't get it. That's an embarrassment. But now it's about some more non-embarrassing stuff. It was, of course, the big win by Junto Nakatani over the weekend when he retained his bantamweight championships over in Japan. Always impressive. Quickly rising up the pound-for-pound rankings. Probably the top 5 right now. Alexander Usyk, Naoya Inoue, Bam Rodriguez, Jaire Opetaia, who I'll touch on in a second, and Junto Nakatani. That's the list. End of discussion. Now we're probably going to get an all Tokyo showdown with him and Inoue, which is going to pack the heck out of the Tokyo Dome. Probably fill close to $100,000 if they want to when it comes to the audience, because that's going to be a hot ticket in Japan. That's probably the only thing that makes sense for them right now, unless he wants to fight with the standout Jesse Bam Rodriguez, which I think that'll be a colossal fight also, Rodriguez and Nakatani. But this guy has just absolutely sizzled and come on out of nowhere like gangbusters, and it's vaulted to the top 5 pound for pound in the boxing world. A stand-up fighter, southpaw, who knows how to put the punches together, did it here. Basically, a flawless performance in his own home country of Japan. And an all-Japan showdown with Naoya Inoue, maybe around the corner, probably within the next year. Let's make that happen, because the world is waiting for that one. And especially over there in Japan, where they're going to pack the house. I mean, Naoya Inoue packs the house. Junto Nakatani is starting to pack the house when he fights. Put them two in the Tokyo Dome. I bet that thing gets close to 100,000 in the audience. I don't know what the max capacity is for that particular arena at all, but it'll fill and then some, because that's the one everyone wants to see over there. Let's make it happen within the next year. Let's go. Now, Inoue has MJ coming up, which I think he should dispose of MJ without even breaking a sweat, because MJ brings nothing to the table other than being a coward. But let's make Inoue, Nakatani next. Let's go. Fill up the Tokyo Dome. Have ESPN or whatever network that's on. Televise it all over the place. That should be something. And we go from Japan to Australia or New Zealand or wherever this is. The top 5 all-time cruiserweight, Jaire Alexander over Christian Squeo in less than 6 rounds. Just another impressive performance. Now it's time for the unification with Zurdo Ramirez. And I probably would favor him rather decisively to beat Ramirez, because Ramirez hasn't beaten a quality opponent in quite some time. Actually, the last quality fighter he fought was Dimitri Bivol, and he couldn't cut the mustard. And if people still think he's going to beat Jaire Alexander after that, you have another thing coming. Now he's got to fight the character Dorticos next on the Paul Chavez Jr. undercard. I think it's going to be a good fight. I mean, Dorticos is no pushover, but I expect Zurdo to get out of that one. It's time for Opetaia to just fight the champions, clean out the division, and put himself among the premier cruiserweights of all time. And there's only 2 that stand out. We know who they are: Evander Holyfield and Alexander Usyk. He cleans out the division. He joins that elite company. Now, of course, the cruiserweight division doesn't have much of a history. We all know that. I mean, a lot of fighters came through from light heavyweight to heavyweight. It's almost like as a stopgap. But when we talk about some of the all-time great cruiserweights, there's only really the top 3 right now, all-time: Holyfield, Usyk, Opetaia. Some others maybe in there. You can throw in maybe a David Hay out of England. Had a good run also. But Holyfield, Usyk, Opetaia, the top 3 cruiserweights of all time. It's time now to see Opetaia versus the Dorticos Ramirez winner. Clean out the division. Put yourself among the all-time great cruiserweights and show the world that you belong among the legends. Nobody is going to touch Opetaia for a while, but it's time to clean up that division because there's too many fake champions, and the only real champion right now in that division fought in Australia on Sunday. That was Jaire Alexander. Period. None of those cruiserweights can carry his jockstrap at the moment. No way. Tremendous skill out of the southpaw stance. Does it all. Showed the display there over the weekend, and nobody is going to beat him. I favor him over either Ramirez or Doricos rather convincingly. I mean, I don't think either fight would be close. That's how good Jaire Alexander is. Yeah, cruiserweight divisions don't do much, but when you have a standout like that, it's something special. And he's a good fighter. If you haven't watched Jaire Alexander, I would recommend you watch him. He's absolutely stellar. Top 5 pound for pound with Usyk and Inoue, Bam Rodriguez himself, and as I mentioned, Junto Nakatani. That's a list and a discussion. No questions asked. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 10th of June 2025. I will be back tomorrow night. As always, make self-care your number one priority in life. If you take care of yourself first, good things will come your way. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Always focus on you first more than anything else. Because the true things in life will certainly follow your way if you do. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves, and God bless.